Hello and welcome to CNBC-TV18. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that you're tracking this evening on Business 360. At least 1,000 people are dead on the third day of the brutal escalation in the Israel-Palestine conflict. 700 Israelis, including 44 soldiers, dead. Dozens taken hostage, says Prime Minister Netanyahu. Israel amasses 1 lakh troops, over 400 deaths reported from Gaza, pummeled by Israeli airstrikes. The U.S. sends an aircraft carrier closer to Israel and pledges to hike military aid. Hamas terms the U.S. announcement an aggression against Palestine. Saudi Arabia and China call on both sides to cease fire immediately. Prime Minister Modi expresses solidarity with Israel. Global stock markets tread with caution amidst the turmoil in the Middle East. Sensex loses nearly 500 points and Nifty down over 140. Crude oil prices jump over 2% as tensions rise in the Middle East. Gold prices also soar as investors rush for safe haven options. Airtel and Vodafone Idea seek a Supreme Court hearing on their curative plea against the levy of adjusted gross revenue dues, cite arithmetic calculation errors in arriving at the demand. The Apex Court agrees to the hearing, but is yet to confirm a date. Airtel and Vodafone Idea jointly owe over 90,000 crores in AGR dues. Assembly election dates for Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Telangana and Mizoram announced. Polling will start from the 7th of November and continue till the 30th of November. Chhattisgarh will vote in 2 phases, all other states to vote in a single phase. Results to be declared on the 3rd of December. And is cricket set for an Olympic debut? Sources say it will make the shortlist inclusion at the Los Angeles Olympics in 2028. A final decision is expected at the IOC meeting in Mumbai this week. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Harvard professor Claudia Goldwyn wins the Nobel Prize for Economics. She provided the first comprehensive account of women's earnings and labor market outcomes through the centuries.
אנחנו במלחמה צריך לשמור על קור רוח. אני קורא לכל אזרחי ישראל להתאחד כדי להשיג את היעד העליון שלנו, ניצחון במלחמה.
In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back.
And that is the top story this evening. At least 1,100 people have died and more than 1 lakh people have been displaced after Palestinian militant group Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel from the Gaza Strip. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said at least 700 Israelis dead. Dozens have been taken hostage. Over 400 people have been killed in Gaza, which is being pounded by Israeli jets. Israel has amassed over 1 lakh troops at the Gaza border. The United Nations Security Council met to discuss the conflict but could not agree on a statement. The United States is sending an aircraft carrier near Israel and has pledged more military aid. Hundreds had gathered at the desert in southern Israel for the Supernova Music Festival when Hamas fighters launched a surprise attack. Partygoers attempted to escape a hail of bullets. At least 260 people were killed at this one spot and dozens taken hostage. In retaliation, Israel is pounding the Gaza Strip with airstrikes. There are reports of civilian casualties on both sides. Schools run by the United Nations in Gaza was also hit by the Israeli airstrike. Israel is likely to have hit 500 targets inside Gaza so far.
As the full scope of the deadliest attack on Israel in decades comes into focus.
This is an attack that I don't think anyone saw coming.
The tragedy compounded with news that at least 4 Americans have been killed. The Senate's top Democrats saying that toll will rise after lawmakers were briefed on the latest developments. Americans who managed to make it out of Israel describing scenes of horror.
There were rockets above us all day.
Israeli officials say at least 700 people have been killed in what they're describing as their nation's 9/11. Israeli airstrikes now hammering the Gaza Strip after the ruling Hamas militant group in Gaza attacked Israel on multiple fronts Saturday morning, raining rockets into Israel, while Hamas fighters infiltrated, in some cases by paraglider, as this video shows. A music festival in the Israeli desert, one of their first targets. 260 people were killed here, many more taken hostage. As the hostage crisis unfolds across the country, this Israeli father desperate to find his kidnapped wife and 2 young daughters.
They are babies, and my wife, they are my only family.
The Defense Department announcing the U.S. is sending military assets closer to Israel to deter any further attacks, while U.S. officials are not ruling out using the assets to help one of America's closest allies in its fight against Hamas.
And geopolitical tensions rocking the markets worldwide. India, no exception. The Sensex and the Nifty dropped 1% each. The broader markets underperformed. 43 of the 50 Nifty stocks ending lower. Now, Prashant is standing by to take us through the market action and how markets have reacted to previous Israel-Palestine conflicts. Prashant, we've seen what the markets have done today, not just here, but worldwide. But take us through what history tells us.
Tragic developments over the weekend, and that had to have an impact on the market, and it did. I mean, the Nifty correcting sharply. We actually came to the lowest point of the day early on, right at start. There was a bit of a middling recovery for some time, but by close, that was sold into, and we ended within 20-25 points of the morning lows. Bank Nifty had it worse. That's the weaker of the two indices, has been for a while. And the Nifty Bank actually ending pretty much at the lows of last week, which is also where it meets an important trend line, slightly upward sloping trend line from the June lows. Mid caps and small caps, well, they had it worse, 1.34% in the mid cap index. The small cap index down about 1.7% as well. Large caps which lost, Adani Ports up on your screen, 5% down. HDFC Life, Hero MotoCorp were some of the others which came under selling pressure. There was also Mahindra and Tata Steel, which were down about 2% or a little bit more. In the broader market, of course, declines outnumbered advances by quite a bit. Lots of PSU banks is what you will see. Union Bank, IOB, UCO Bank, Central Bank. But there was also Godrej Industries, which gave back Friday's, sharp rally. There was JSW Infra, which is another port company. Recent listing has done very well, which gave back. There was Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, big rally recently, and GMR Airports, which was down about 2% as well. Some gainers as well. Oil India stood out. Of course, oil prices have spiked up. You have Quick Heal, Care Ratings, and PG Electroplast, which were higher. The question on everybody's mind is, if this conflict continues, what is the impact on market? I went back and looked at the last two instances. Both these conflicts in 2014 and 2021, and they will come up on your screen, ran for different durations, right? But this is the impact. U.S. equities in both these instances sold off between 4.5% and 5% or so, actually 5.6 there. The 10-year, which is basically an indication of risk on or risk off, came under selling pressure. They were down about 20 basis points on an average. Oil prices up 19% in the 2021 episode. And 2014, they were down 12%. But the backdrop to that is that prices were already at $120 per barrel. So, you were coming off of very high levels. And of course, the equities where the conflict is happening, Israel, down sharply as well. The hope is things de-escalate quickly. Otherwise, the roadmap in terms of how markets have reacted in the past, of course, is with us. Back to you.
Right, Prashant, many thanks for joining us. And yes, all hope that there will be a de-escalation. Of course, at this point in time, doesn't seem to be the case. Crude prices have surged amidst fears that the Israel-Palestine conflict will escalate, and that will lead to further tensions in the Middle East and impact output from oil producers. Petroleum Minister Hardeep Puri said that India is watching the conflict closely and will handle energy needs with maturity. Meanwhile, gold prices soaring more than 1% on the back of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Investors have rushed for safe haven assets. Prices have jumped to $1,850 an ounce of gold, seeing some price moves today. Back home, shares of TCS hitting a 52-week high in early trade after the company announced a proposal for a share buyback. The company's board will consider the proposal at its meeting on the 11th of October. This will be the company's 5th share buyback in 6 years. That's the TCS stock closing about about 0.5% higher. Now, it's been more than 3 years since the Supreme Court directed telecom companies to clear their adjusted gross revenue dues, or AGRs for short. Now, the Supreme Court gave them a 10-year time frame to do so. It's been over 2 years since it dismissed Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea and Tata Tele's plea seeking a review of the AGR calculation. However, the issue continues to haunt the telecom sector. Airtel and Vodafone Idea have now sought a Supreme Court hearing on their curative plea against the levy of adjusted gross revenue dues. Ashmit is standing by now with the details. Ashmit, it's been 3 years since that controversial AGR judgment which went against the telcos. What are telecom companies hoping for?
Well, it's clearly the last roll of the dice for both Bharti Airtel as well as Vodafone Idea, hoping for some relief. The numbers involved are very huge, and that's in fact the very argument that their lawyers had made. In terms of lawyers, they've rolled out the big guns here. Senior advocates Harish Salve, former Attorney General K.K. Venugopal, representing this cause, arguing that the numbers involved are so grave, that the concerns of the industry are so severe, that there is a requirement for hearing this curative application in open court. And they've mentioned this before, none other than the Chief Justice himself. But you're right, this battle goes back very many years. In fact, the genesis of the battle goes back to 2003. But just to help our viewers jog their memories, October 2019 is when this AGR demand of nearly 1.5 lakh crore rupees was upheld. Subsequently, in March of next year, 2020, that's when the DOT had diluted its position, saying that, fine, we're agreeable for a 20-year payout of these AGR dues. September 2020, the Supreme Court reconfirmed its AGR demand of 1.5 lakh crores and said we can only allow 10 years and we will not allow the 20-year period. Subsequently, in July of 2021, the Supreme Court again disappointed both these telecom companies by saying that there is no room for recomputation, even for arithmetic or calculation errors. And that is when the message started to sink home, so much so that the DOT had to come out with a sweeping relief package, which ironically included a change in definition of AGR, the very definition that they had been fighting against in the Supreme Court before the verdict. But nonetheless, Vodafone Idea appears to be the worst impacted. They opted for a 4-year moratorium under that relief package. They opted for converting their AGR dues into government equity, now to a point where the government is the single largest shareholder, and the Vodafone Idea finds itself in a position where they're unable to roll out 5G. They're facing erosion of their subscriber base. They're unable to pay their TAR dues. So clearly, a last roll of the dice, this, not just for Vodafone Idea, but for Bharti Airtel. Of course, the Apex Court will have to give more clarity on when they choose to hear this curative petition in open court and give more clarity on the way forward.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us. As Ashmit was pointing out, this is going to be watched very, very closely, if at all any relief is provided by the Supreme Court in the AGR matter. Oyo Hotels is in talks with multiple private equity firms to raise around $500 million at an expected valuation of $6 billion. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that of the $500 million, about $300 million will be via primary sale of shares and $200 million will be through a secondary sale of shares. Another CNBC-TV18 news break is confirmed. Market regulator SEBI's Tech Advisory Panel has given its approval to Multi-Commodity Exchange to launch its new web-based commodity derivatives platform. Sources say that MCX is likely to announce the go-live date soon and may propose the 16th of October for the launch. The GST Council announced a slew of decisions over the weekend. The Council exempted GST on flour containing 70% of millet and slashed the tax on millet flour food preparations from 18% to 5%. In a boost for sugarcane farmers, the GST on molasses has been cut from 28% to 5%. The Council also ceded the right to tax the extra neutral alcohol, which is used for manufacturing liquor for human consumption, to states. The Confederation of Indian Alcoholic Beverages has welcomed the move and referred to it as a big relief for the alcohol industry.
Going forward, the clarity that is not applicable, GST is not applicable, is a huge help to the industry, because now all those litigations and various SLPs being filed, high court rate petitions, those things will be behind us, and companies can focus on future. The big fear was if it was made retrospective. While we have been raising this matter from August 2017, if the matter was made retrospective, the fear was many companies might have shut down because the liability would have run into thousands of crores.
Well, those are the decisions taken by the GST Council over the weekend. Now, India's auto retail sales have seen a double-digit growth in September. As per data by the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association of FADA, all categories have seen growth except for tractor sales, which have declined 10% on a year-on-year basis. Three-wheeler sales have hit an all-time high in September. The dealers' body is optimistic about the festive season demand. FMCG sales dipped over 2% for the July to September quarter. A report by Bizom has highlighted that the drop in sales is largely on account of slow demand in the branded commodities and beverage segment. However, the report has said it sees a rise in sales of FMCG products in September with the festive season coming up. Abu Dhabi Investment Authority will invest over 4,900 crore rupees in Reliance Retail for less than 1% stake. Nisha standing by now with the details. Nisha, take us through the contours of this deal and where this now leaves Reliance Retail.
Thanks for that. Yes, more investors joined the Reliance Retail's $100 billion club. In the latest, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority picks additional 0.5% stake for close to about 5,000 crore rupees to become the second investor with a follow-on investment in this company. So now their stake stands at 1.77%, one of the largest, remember, investors in Reliance Retail. KKR had also made a follow-on investment and owns 1.4% stake in Reliance Retail. Now, looking at the second round of fundraise at $100 billion valuation, which started just before its AGM in August this year, well, Reliance Retail has now raised about over 15,000 crore rupees by selling 1.8% stake in the company with investors like Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, KKR and ADIA, 3 investors. Now, Mukesh Ambani had also hinted at a strong global interest in his retail business in the last AGM, we remember, of Reliance Industries. Now, it comes after 3 years of the last fundraise at around $50 billion investment valuation, in which a slew of marquee global investors like Silver Lake, KKR, ADIA, GIC, TPG, the list is long amongst others, had really pumped in over 47,000 crore rupees for 10.5% stake in the retail arm of this large conglomerate. Now, double the valuation comes on account of the scorching pace of growth of the company, as the chairman guided that retail will be the fastest growing business in terms of both revenues as well as EBITDA. So retail has multiple growth avenues. In the most recent developments, well, the brand bouquet has been expanded as it acquires majority ownership of Superdry IP for India, also getting ready for the big sale opportunities in the festive season. Well, JioMart rebranded its festive campaign to Jio Utsav, Celebrations of India, live this very weekend with MS Dhoni as the brand ambassador. JioMart's tie-up, remember, with Meta completes a year and has seen a 7x growth in the monthly orders via the WhatsApp business of that partnership. Now, in beauty products, it launched omni-channel beauty retail platform Tira, which opens its first Hyderabad store recently, taking the total store count to now 3 in India. Even to capture the iPhone frenzy and boost its mobile phone sales, well, the discounts offered for iPhone 15 purchased from Reliance retail stores. So more follow-on public investors really coming in as existing investors reinforce, because of the various growth drivers, its $100 billion valuation.
Nisha, many thanks for joining us. We will head into a break, but when we return, the poll bugle sounded in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Telangana and Mizoram. The assembly elections will be a litmus test for the BJP and the India Alliance ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. That and more when we return. Well, the big national story, 5 states will go to the polls between November 7th and November 30th. The polling will take place in a single phase in Mizoram, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Telangana. It will be a 2-phase election in Chhattisgarh. Results will be declared for all states on the 3rd of December. Santhya standing by now with more details. Santhya, the semi-finals before the 2024 finals. Explain to us why these state elections will be so crucial.
See, the upcoming assembly elections for Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Telangana and Mizoram ahead of the 2024 parliamentary elections are important, and here are the reasons why. First, these elections are taking place 6 months prior to the Lok Sabha elections and are often considered as a preview of general elections. Though in 2018, the scenario was different. Congress formed a government in Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan and MP, but underperformed in all these states in 2019 Lok Sabha. That's not all. The Congress failed to win even a single Lok Sabha seat in Rajasthan. Now, whether these state elections this time will be a reflection of what to expect in 2024 Lok Sabha elections or not, that remains to be seen. But the battle for the Hindi heartland seems to be close. Now, second, anti-incumbency. That's a key factor in Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Telangana and MP. The results of these elections will decide the fate of political heavyweights like Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Ashok Gehlot, K. Chandrasekhar Rao and Bhupesh Baghel. All these states are trying to woo the voters, especially women voters, by launching multiple welfare schemes one after the other. So these state elections will prove whether these welfare schemes will continue to be a game changer for these political parties or not. Talking about the next issue, BJP has a no CM face for Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and even Madhya Pradesh this time around. Once again, it's depending on the Modi factor. And fighting among the factions of both the parties in states like Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and MP is also a key factor. Opposition in all these states is trying to corner their respective state governments on issues like corruption, women's safety and law and order. And these elections will also prove if the voters will consider these issues while casting their votes or not. And last but not the least, these elections will also be a litmus test for the newly formed India Alliance, which will face BJP collectively for the first time since its formation.
All right, Santhi, I appreciate you joining us. That's the big one, 5 states going to elections in November. Now, here's something exciting for cricket lovers. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the sport is likely to be included in the Los Angeles 2028 proposal to the International Olympic Committee. Remember, LA is the host nation for the 2028 Olympics. The final decision is expected to be taken at the IOC meeting in Mumbai, and that meeting will, of course, kick off on the 12th. In an exclusive conversation with me in September, IOC President Thomas Bach had said that he was in favor of cricket's inclusion in the Olympics, but he did, of course, say that it was up to the host nation to first make that proposal and then eventually the IOC would have to sign off on it. Remember, the last time cricket was played at the Olympics was in 1990.
Talking about India, I must ask you whether the possibility of cricket being included in the LA Games are we closer to a decision? Do you believe that would make sense as well?
No, it could make sense. I cannot hide that I'm really a fan of cricket. I was even playing once.
You were playing cricket?
I was doing one in Fiji. We were walking across a sports field, and there was women playing cricket in Fiji. And then my spokesperson, who is an ardent fan of cricket, he came and said, now you have to play. So we went to this women's cricket team, and they allowed me to play with them for some moments. So now it's in the hands of the organizing committee of LA. To make a proposal, and then once we have this proposal, then the IOC Executive Board will take a decision. And
soon, I imagine.
When, from today on, it should be exactly a week.
In a week's time, but given the large interest that cricket generates, the eyeballs involved, the format, the T20 format, which is much more acceptable now to a larger audience, this should be a sort of, a 6, wouldn't it, if it were to be included, to use the cricketing analogy?
Yeah. Now, of course, the T20 format was necessary. With the traditional format, we could not have accommodated cricket in the Olympic program. But with the T20 format, this would be very possible. So let's see when the proposal is coming. I think you can imagine from my answer what my answer to such a request would be.
Yeah, I can see you're voting yes on this one.
Well, that is the IOC President Thomas Bach, and we are given to understand, as per sources, that as the host nation, LA has proposed to the IOC that cricket be included as part of the Olympics in 2028. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news continues.